If you have a busy, noisy mind like me, you are constantly thinking about the future or the past, or you feel overwhelmed by the constant external stimulation from the media and people around you, there is a simple yet powerful spiritual practice you can do to stop your thoughts and help you feel inner peace. It's so simple that anyone can do it, but most people won't. Even someone like me who has experienced the benefit of this spiritual practice, I don't do it as often as I like to. I'll tell you why later and how you can do it properly. So what is this spiritual practice? It's observing silence. So once my friend shared this spiritual practice with us, it involves sitting quietly in nature, doing nothing for at least 3 hours. I find this very intriguing and I try it out for myself. In the first hour, my mind was rather noisy. A lot of different thoughts crossed my mind, like which sport do I want to see, what am I going to do later, or where am I heading next, when will this end? But as I continued to observe my thoughts and let them drop away, I reached a point where there was complete silence. And for the next 1 to 2 hours, I had no thoughts, except some insight that I received from my higher self from time to time. It was mostly complete silence as I observed the surrounding, watching the birds flying in the sky, the clouds floating so slowly, listening to the wave. I wasn't narrating what I saw, I was just observing. It was a very blissful and peaceful experience. I felt really connected with my authentic self and the world around me. I did it a few times and it works every time. It's really great at helping me reset my mind and my energy. And I realized I did something similar before. When I had my first spiritual awakening, this was what I did intuitively. I just sat down on one of the benches in my neighborhood park and took in the beauty of the surrounding and nature. And my mind became quiet and I was very connected with my spirit. Of course, everyone's experience is going to be slightly different. Your mental chatter may last longer than your blissful period. You may feel rather bored or restless sitting there doing nothing for 3 hours. Or there may be some memories or other emotion coming up for you that you may not have realized previously. For example, last September when I went to the park and sat there to observe silence, I was sobbing quite a bit. I was feeling the separation between my twin flame and I. I know that he went back to his hometown and he didn't tell me about it. And intuitively, I know that he's leaving for good, or at least for a long period of time. And I was feeling this grief that I didn't know I have. I didn't know that I was so attached to my friend. And I didn't know that I was going through a dark night of the soul until then. And nature has this funny way of like setting the mood. When I was there in the shelter, it was raining and pouring heavily, that no one is around me. And there was so much rain and I just allowed my tears to flow through and cry as much as I wanted without other people around me seeing me cry in the public. So you will not know what to expect when you practice this, but one thing I'm certain of is every time I did this practice, I felt a deep sense of inner peace. Even that time when I was crying, I felt good because I was releasing all the emotion that I was unconsciously suppressing. And after I processed the emotion, I was actually feeling rather happy and relieved and also grateful for the experience. I felt very connected with my inner being and there was this deep sense of knowing that everything is going to be alright. I definitely recommend you to try it out for yourself, but I also know that many of you watching this video are not going to try it out. You know why? Because our ego gets in the way. When you are quieting your mind down, your ego loses control. It dies temporarily. So why does your ego want to do that? Giving up control and being silent. I remember when my friend first shared this spiritual practice, I was excited and eager to try it out. But then when it was time to do the practice, I was at home thinking, it is going to rain. Maybe I'll go another time. I think there are going to be a lot of mosquitoes there. And also the place is too far away from my home. I don't have time for this. I have work to do. It took me some time to get myself to the park. The spiritual practice doesn't begin at the park or the beach or the garden. It begins the moment you decide to do this spiritual practice. Your ego will come up with a lot of reasons and excuses to convince you not to do this spiritual practice. But how are you going to deal with all these excuses? Are you going to listen to your ego or your spirit? This is a chance for us to practice not believing all the thoughts we have and choose the path that we truly desire. Even if you didn't end up doing this practice, by entertaining this idea, you can still gain some insights of how your ego tries to convince or influence your decisions. This is a simple yet powerful spiritual practice, but to do it effectively, there are 4 components to consider. First, the place. Actually, you don't have to observe silence in nature. You can do it in a silent retreat, you can do it at home, or you can do it even in a supermarket. You can observe silence anywhere. It's just easier to do it in nature. I don't know about you, but nature always has this healing quality to it. Every time I go to nature, I just feel good. Nature shares the same frequency with your spirit, so it will be much easier to connect with your spiritual self when you are in a park or in a garden, especially when near the ocean and river. It feels like the waves are cleansing my mind and my soul and my heart. It feels very calming. Also, there is enough movement in nature to keep things interesting, like the bird chirping, the trees swaying, or the clouds floating in the skies. But they are not as stimulating that it will overwhelm and distract you. Unlike at home where you have so many little things that may distract you like TV, computers, phone call, someone may walk into your room and start a conversation with you or ask you where a thing is placed. It's harder to get away from people and distraction at home. You can still do it at home, but you have to make sure that you find a space where you can be alone. If you have a backyard with a garden, I would suggest doing it outdoors. Or if you are indoor, it would be good if you can face the sky or the tree outside of your window. As much as possible, I will try to find a place where I can observe nature so that I can still receive the benefit that nature brings. The second thing is the duration. 3 hours can seem like a very long time and it may deter you from practicing, but from experience, it only feels long in the beginning because the egoic mind is complaining and judging the experience. Once your thoughts slow down or stop, time actually passes very fast. It's just an illusion our mind creates. Like when you resist something, it drags on like forever. But if you surrender to the present moment and let go of your resistance, time feels like it passes so quickly. And just to put things in perspective here, 3 hours is the time we take to watch a long movie or maybe 2 regular movies. We are willing to spend time for entertainment, but we are not willing to spend the same amount of time for our own well-being and to be with ourselves. Think about it. Like, what is more important? And I get it, most of us are not used to spending so much time with ourselves. Even when we spend time alone, we are with our computer, our smartphone, our books, or doing something to keep our mind occupied. If it can feel rather uncomfortable being with yourself, with your own mind, with your own emotion, especially if you have not done any meditation regularly prior to this practice. So in the beginning, you may want to start with a shorter duration like 30 minutes, just to get you familiar with being with yourself. But I must say that it will not be as effective as observing silence for 3 hours, because it's going to take a while before your mind settles and get completely quiet. I mean, I can switch off my mind instantly right now for a short period of time, but it won't last. Soon the thoughts will come back and the mind will get noisy again. It will start judging things, comparing and analyzing things. This is the role of the mind. It's only when you do this for a long period of time, until your mind has run out of things to say, that you start to experience the deep peace and bliss beyond your egoic mind. The third component is observing silence. Observing silence means you're not talking to anyone. You're also not talking to yourself, whether is it verbally or in your mind. Sometimes thoughts comes to you. Other times you initiate the thoughts. You think about something. This practice is not the same as introspection. You're not journaling. You're not finding a quiet space and asking yourself questions, pondering the pondering pondering the answers. Journaling is a wonderful practice, but you are initiating your thinking process. It's not the same as observing silence because you're having a dialogue with yourself. Having said that, I do bring a pencil and paper to jot down my thoughts, because sometimes when I'm all by myself and observing silence, I have some interesting insights which are great for content like this, or there are some questions and insights that are great for me to reflect upon when I go back home. So I want to capture them and not forget them. However, my friend's original version is purely observation. Capturing thoughts is not part of this practice. For me, I'm a bit easy on this. I find that as long as you're not asking yourself questions or having a dialogue, you're just scribbling thoughts that came to you, I felt that is still okay. Writing your thoughts down, to me, is another form of letting go and release. You're still observing the thoughts and the silence. It's not like you're judging your thoughts or adding more to the conversation. You're not activating your thinking process or initiating thoughts. So I find that it's fine, but it's really up to you. One important thing to take note of is you're not forcing yourself to have no thoughts when you're observing silence. This is what I see many people do wrong. Silence will come eventually. There will be a moment when you have no thoughts, but you don't want to force it. You don't want to force yourself to be silent, like, shut up, shh, go away, thoughts. Because what you're doing isn't observing. You are reacting to your thoughts. You are resisting your thoughts. You are judging yourself for having thoughts. As mentioned, there are thoughts that we receive and the thoughts we think. The thought we receive, we don't have much control over them. They come based on our belief system, what we feel in the moment. But we can choose not to think more of a certain topic or add more to the conversation. We can choose not to talk or share with someone else our thoughts. We can choose to drop them or just jot them down. For these things, we have control. And before I tell you what the last component is, I just want to do a 1 minute observing silence with you, so you can know what observing silence feels like or is like. So we are just going to do 1 minute, and if you don't want to do this practice, you can just skip ahead to the last component. So 1 minute, timer start now. Okay, 1 minute is up. So it's not a very forceful practice. It's just a very relaxing practice. Of course, I'm looking straight into the camera lens, but when you're doing it in nature, you're just observing the surrounding. You don't have to like face straight ahead. The last component is doing nothing. We all have visited nature spots like parks, gardens, rivers, and beaches, but we usually go there for some kind of activities like hiking, running, sunbathing, reading a book, or to take photos. And sometimes we go with our friend and have a chit chat with them. These experiences are wonderful. However, this spiritual practice is different. You will have to shut down your phone or at least put it in silent mode. You will have to venture into nature alone without chatting with anyone or engaging in any activities. Again, I'm not strict about this. If you have been sitting in a spot or a place for some time and you want to shift to another spot or just move your body a little bit, that's fine, as long as it's not the main activity. But walking in nature while observing silence, I feel that walking in nature is very healing, but it's not the same practice. When you sit down in silence, what you are also practicing is stillness. When you are walking in nature, I don't know about you, but I always feel that there are many interesting things to see, explore, and observe, like the ants on the ground, or the bark of the tree, or the different flowers and their colors. When you become more focused externally instead of internally, it's easy to get distracted from your spiritual practice. Also, whenever your mind gets bored or restless and you find another thing to feed your interest, you're not really practicing observation. It's still great to appreciate nature and be in that vibration. It does help to reconnect with your spirit because your spirit is all about appreciation. But this is not the same. When you sit down in silence, it's more about being than doing. You feel what it's like to be the observer, the awareness more when you stay in one spot because there are more contrasts between being and doing. Your mind will feel restless and want to go somewhere when you stay still, but every time it runs away, you will experience the contrast. And whenever you bring your mind back to the center, you become more aware of where your center is. Doing nothing is crucial to this spiritual practice because when you are constantly doing something, your mind keeps getting activated. Initially, when you stop doing things, your mind will feel a bit lost and restless. However, being and doing are not always mutually exclusive. Watch this next video to find out more.